Hello and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches. I'm Tenyola Shobowale. On the program this week, we focus on the situation in Ukraine as the conflict with Russia escalates. Explosions rang out in the capital Kyiv and other cities as Russia invaded Ukraine. They came after Russia's President Vladimir Putin ordered a military operation into Ukraine's east. Russian forces fired missiles at several cities and landed troops on Ukraine's southern coast. Several Ukrainian civilians have been reportedly killed.
Телефонный разговор с президентом Российской Федерации.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared martial law. He has also called on citizens to fight and says weapons will be issued to everyone who wants them. Ukraine's allies have been quick to condemn Russia's actions and have vowed hard-hitting sanctions.
We've been transparent with the world. We've shared declassified evidence about Russia's plans and cyber attacks and false pretexts so that there could be no confusion or cover-up about what Putin was doing. Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences. Today, I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions and new limitations on what can be exported to Russia. This is going to impose severe cost on the Russian economy, both immediately and over time. We have purposely designed these sanctions to maximize the long-term impact on Russia and to minimize the impact on the United States and our allies. We've now sanctioned Russian banks that together hold around $1 trillion in assets. We've cut off Russia's largest bank, a bank that holds more than 1/3 of Russia's banking assets by itself, cut it off from the U.S. financial system. And today, we're also blocking 4 more major banks. That means every asset they have in America will be frozen.
For this, Putin will stand condemned in the eyes of the world and of history. He will never be able to cleanse the blood of Ukraine from his hands. And although the UK and our allies tried every avenue for diplomacy until the final hour, I'm driven to conclude that Putin was always determined to attack his neighbour, no matter what we did. Now we see him for what he is, a blood-stained aggressor who believes in imperial conquest. I am proud that Britain did everything within our power to help Ukraine prepare for this onslaught, and we will do our utmost to offer more help as our brave friends defend their homeland. With new financial measures, we're taking new powers to target Russian finance, in addition to the banks we've already sanctioned this week. Today, in concert with the United States, we are imposing a full asset freeze on VTB. More broadly, these powers will enable us totally to exclude Russian banks from the UK financial system, which is, of course, by far the largest in Europe, stopping them from accessing sterling and clearing payments through the UK.
These sanctions will have a heavy impact. Russia's economy has already faced intensive pressure in the recent weeks, and these pressures will now accumulate. These sanctions will suppress Russia's economic growth, increase the borrowing costs, raise inflation, intensify capital outflow, and gradually erode its industrial basis. The second main pillar of our sanctions concerns limiting Russia's access to crucial technology. We want to cut off Russia's industry from the technologies desperately needed today to build a future. Our measures will weaken Russia's technological position in key areas, actually from which the elite makes most of their money. And this ranges from high-tech components to cutting-edge software. This will also seriously degrade the Russian economy in all areas in the future. Let me be very clear. It is President Putin who will have to explain this to his citizens. I know that the Russian people do not want this war.
The Russian government launched a brutal invasion, unprovoked, on Ukraine and should be condemned for doing so, and Australia does. Together with the international community, we are banding together in strong terms to condemn these outrageous acts in the strongest possible terms. We are now progressing the second phase of those financial sanctions. The Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs, Senator Birmingham, has completed the process of applying sanctions to an additional 25 persons. This includes army commanders, deputy defence ministers and Russian mercenaries who have been responsible for the unprovoked and unacceptable aggression, and 4 entities involved in the development and sale of military technology and weapons.
Canada is unequivocal in our condemnation of Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attack on the sovereign, democratic state of Ukraine. President Putin's brazen disregard for international law, democracy, and human life are a massive threat to security and peace around the world. In light of Russia's reckless and dangerous military strike, we are imposing further severe sanctions. These sanctions will target 58 individuals and entities, including members of the Russian elite and their family members, as well as the Wagner Group and major Russian banks, among others. We will also sanction members of the Russian Security Council, including the Defense Minister, the Finance Minister, and the Justice Minister. In addition, effective immediately, we are ceasing all export permits for Russia and cancelling existing permits. These sanctions are wide-reaching. They will impose severe costs on complicit Russian elites, and they will limit President Putin's ability to continue funding this unjustified invasion.
French President Emmanuel Macron says his country will respond without weakness to Russia's act of war against Ukraine, and Russia should expect tough sanctions that would hit its military, its economy, and its energy sector. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says Russia has launched a cold-blooded, long-planned invasion.
Despite all calls on Russia to change course and tireless efforts to seek a diplomatic solution, peace on our continent has been shattered. We now have war in Europe on a scale and of a type we thought belonged to history. This is a grave moment for the security of Europe. Russia's unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine is putting countless innocent lives at risk. With air and missile attacks, ground forces and special forces from multiple directions, targeting military infrastructure and major urban centers. This is a deliberate, cold-blooded and long-planned invasion. Despite its litany of lies, denials and disinformation, the Kremlin's intentions are clear for the world to see. Russia's leaders bear full responsibility for their reckless actions and the lives lost. NATO allies condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine in the strongest possible terms. It is a blatant violation of international law, an act of aggression against a sovereign, independent and peaceful country, and a serious threat to Euro-Atlantic security.
Ukrainian state air traffic services has closed the country's airspace. Traffic jams have formed in the capital Kyiv as residents try to leave the city. Residents have also sought shelter in stations with queues forming for buses, cash points and petrol.
With Russia's build-up of tens of thousands of troops over the past year, many Ukrainian citizens have been preparing for an unwelcome fight. One of them is Alyssa, a 38-year-old Ukrainian with an office job in the capital, who has always enjoyed sport shooting but is now worried she might have to use those skills in a real war with Russia.
Even though she's a media relations specialist based in the capital city, Kiev, Alisa has always enjoyed shooting for sport. More than a year ago, the 38-year-old Ukrainian mother joined a local territorial defense unit looking to acquire combat skills. They are skills she now fears she may have to use in the face of a Russian threat.
In our country, 8 years we live in a war. And now the situation is very tense. That's why I think that everyone in Ukraine should join territorial defense forces in order to have an opportunity to defend family, son, daughter, and maybe friends from possible Russian aggression.
Alisa puts on camouflage fatigues, takes one of her 2 small caliber guns and heads to a training ground. Along with dozens of other volunteers, mostly men with civilian jobs, she spends 7 hours either with her weapon on the ground or on guard as part of a small patrol tasked to protect a concrete building from enemies. She says the basic training gives her comfort.
Now I understand so much that my skill that I've got all this period serving in territorial defense forces, it's so important. I feel self-convenient. I'm sure that I have enough skills.
Alisa says that like all Ukrainians, she doesn't want a war, but if war comes to her, she will take up her rifle and fight.
I, as all Ukrainian people, don't want here to be a war. We want to live in peace and harmony. Nobody here in our country wants to fight. But if our big brother will make us to defend, I will take a rifle, and my friends will take a rifle, and all the people that in territorial defense forces will take a rifle. We will do all not to be the part of Russia, because we're not Russia.
Beyond the regular army, Ukraine has volunteer territorial defense units and around 900,000 reservists. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky ordered the number of Ukrainian territorial defense forces to 2 million on February the 11th. Students in the eastern city of Kharkiv are learning about bulletproof vests and explosives, as well as practicing evacuation drills and first aid. The city, which is under Ukrainian government control, is home to tank aircraft and tractor factories and lies 40 kilometers from the Russian border. It has been identified by President Volodymyr Zelensky as a possible Russian target.
In this situation, we try to avoid panic both from children and teachers. We try to show them all this. Tell them, let them try on our uniforms, bulletproof vests and helmets. Show them what explosive items can be, so that they can become aware of situations that may happen to them.
Protesters have taken to the streets around the world in support of Ukraine.
What we want here today is to cut off Russia from SWIFT system, because obviously they are sponsored this war with some money. You know, they are selling gas and they have businesses all around the world. So to stop that, we suggest to cut them off from SWIFT as possible as it can be, as far as it can be, cut them off from using Russian gas here and all over the world, and support us with weapons. I understand that you're not going to send your troops because, of course, it's not your war, but we are a shield to protect all the other countries in Europe and in the world. So please help Ukraine to stand against, because we're not going to give up and it's not going to end. We need to stop him.
They are, they're absolutely ignoring all international laws. They are, they're killing civilians. My friends, they are fighting as Ukrainian troops and everything, and they're dying for no reason. It's our land. We didn't do anything wrong. It's just Putin's ambitions.
In Germany, hundreds of people gathered in front of the Russian embassy in Berlin, waving Ukrainian flags, banners and placards reading "Stop War, Stop Putin" or "Solidarity with Ukraine." And in France, about 100 pro-Ukraine demonstrators gathered in front of the Russian embassy in Paris to call for help from France and Europe to defend Ukraine.
When Foreign Dispatches returns in just a moment, people in Brazil in mourning as landslide death toll rises to over 170. You're still watching Foreign Dispatches on Channels Television. Over a week after heavy rainfall lashed the Brazilian city of Petrópolis, the death toll from flash floods and landslides that hit the tourist town has risen to over 170. Officials are conducting a massive cleanup operation. More than 700 people who lost their homes or had to evacuate are still being housed in emergency shelters.
Heavy rains have plagued Brazil over the last few months, but 3 hours of extremely heavy rain on Tuesday, February 15, led to more than 250 landslides, including mudslides that caused mass destruction in Petrópolis, a city built on a hillside like many low-income neighborhoods in Brazil. The mudslides took everything in their path: cars, homes and people. Over 170 people have been confirmed dead.
I've got no words. I'm destroyed. Destroyed because of everything we've lost. Our neighbors, our friends. The house, that doesn't matter. We're alive, thank God. But what about those who passed away? It's tragic.
I've lived here for 44 years. I've never seen anything like this. To die this way. My friends have all gone. My friend Sheena lived in a house here. She was one of my best friends. I'm very sad. My heart is with those buried beneath the dirt.
My house was here. The mudslide came from this side and washed away the whole house. Underneath this, there are many bodies, and sadly, my wife is one of them.
In just 3 hours, Petrópolis received more rainfall than expected for the entire February, which prompted the mayor's office to decree a state of public disaster. Officials say it was the worst rainfall in more than 90 years. For many local residents, the tragedy is a sad reminder of a similar catastrophe that killed more than 900 people in the same area in 2011. Nearly 9,000 people were rendered homeless, and at least 21,000 others abandoned their housing for fear of further mudslides. While experts say increased rainfall is linked to climate change and weather, the growth of the city, located 70 miles north of Rio de Janeiro's beaches, is also to blame for the disaster. Rapid urbanization, poor planning, lack of financing for subsidized housing, all of these things have afflicted the city. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro flew over the region last week Friday and described what he saw as a war scene. Around 700 people are being housed in schools and shelters, and charities are calling for donations of mattresses, food, clothing and face masks. Southeastern Brazil has been punished with heavy rains since the start of the year. Over 40 deaths were recorded between mudslides in Minas Gerais state in early January and Sao Paulo state later the same month.
And in Egypt, residents are facing one of the coldest winters in recent years. Charities say the country's poor are those mostly affected as they struggle to stay warm and face the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Taking a 50-kilometer commute to Cairo to clean houses and working as a daily laborer in her village is not enough for 36-year-old Mona Fati to support her 5 children and sick husband in El Hayata, Egypt. living in a badly insulated house with limited means to secure necessities like blankets. Fatih's woes are further compounded by a harsh winter.
It was so cold. We were shivering under the blankets. It felt like there was ice outside. But what can we do? We only thank God. We're living in a hot pack here, but good people, may they be blessed, built this room for us.
Rare snowstorms have been hitting the coastal cities of Hurghada and Alexandria this winter, with Egyptians reporting lower temperatures in Cairo and other cities in recent years. Impoverished Egyptians like Fatih are not ready to face extreme weather conditions.
I was living in a hut made of mud. The ceiling was made of straw. When it rained, I used to put water basins on the floor for the rain to fall in. We were spreading old clothes on the floor to sit on. We stayed like that for 5 months. It was very difficult. Then good people built this room for us and the bathroom over there. The bathroom is without a ceiling. We stayed in the room and all slept in it. Good people then built 2 other rooms for us and built a ceiling as well. We thank God.
Some 30% of Egyptians fall beneath the government's poverty line, with incomes below £857 a month. Many struggle without running water or sanitation.
During the past 2 years, we started seeing severe cold. The weather is very cold during winter. Egyptians are not prepared. Their clothing, houses, and the things available to them are not equipped to face it. People do not have blankets to cover their children, which can give them the warmth they need in these temperatures. Homes are not thermally insulated. Within Greater Cairo and beyond, many homes do not have a ceiling. People live in houses with sky as their ceiling. These are very dire conditions, which were compounded by the weather and compounded even further with COVID-19. Starting from March 2020, many of our beneficiaries lost their jobs, so there is no fixed income for the families. With the extreme cold, families do not have the means to face it.
The government has already pared back subsidies on electricity and fuel, ushering in annual increases in their price since 2016 as part of market reforms linked to financing the International Monetary Fund.
And finally on the program, an Algerian blacksmith is changing the art world by making use of recycled iron waste to create innovative pieces. As a plus, he's also making the environment cleaner and safer. Let's take a look.
A statue of a gold and black horse stands tall on a platform in front of Algerian artist Walid Tribesh's workshop in Sétif. A closer look reveals that it is made up of nuts, bolts, and pieces of scrap metal. Working as a traditional blacksmith for 20 years, Tribesh decides to use his profession as a tool to create contemporary art by producing statues from recycled iron waste discarded by mechanics.
My beginnings were in ordinary technical blacksmithing, but with time and considering that iron is an expensive material, I wanted to make pieces of art by recycling iron waste thrown by mechanics or others.
While initially Tribesh had few clients due to the novelty of his work, the 39-year-old artist says demand for his pieces grew enough for him to make a living out of it.
I make a living from this work and there is good turnout, praise be to God. In the beginning I had fewer clients because it was something new, but now there is strong demand.
Tribesh aspires to gain exposure abroad by participating in international art exhibitions.
Well, this is where we say goodbye till next time, but remember, our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you so much for watching the program. I'm Tenyola Shobowale. Bye for now.